Welcome everybody to Learn Biz with the fabulous, infamous, intelligent, Ethan Miliori,
yes,
and the other guy Ryan. So
that's how I would have introduced it.
I was thinking recently of something I want to do, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, and I'm doing it on purpose because I want this to be a little bit more authentic and not so pre-scripted.
Yeah, I'll keep a raised eyebrow for you the whole time until I know where this is going.
So, a lot of people want advice on business, and I'm just going to ask. We're going to bounce back and forth and probably give our top 2 or 3 bits of advice that we want to make sure that we are sharing with businesses. So, I will give you just a second to think.
I already know what my top one is.
Oh, okay.
Already, I don't even have to think about that one.
Okay, then I want to hear your top one.
My top one is show a profit, and not just show a profit, show a damn profit. I get sick and tired of people not showing a profit because I can't help them when it comes to financing if they don't show a profit. Oh, it's that
Thank
bad.
you for tuning in today.
Show a profit, please, please, please. Stop writing everything off.
Okay.
Your turn. Why
I
go have a Zen moment and come back to reality?
I mean, tell us how you really feel. Don't hold back.
You can't tell me that that's not a legitimate concern of yours.
No, I get where you're going with this. Just saying that
it's got to be in your top 5, guaranteed.
Well, so my top one, and we're going to combine them because it's in line with what you're saying here. But my top one is learn to speak the language.
Oh, that's a good one too.
And when I say learn to speak the language, I'm not talking about learn how to talk around the board table. I'm talking about learn to read and understand financials.
Yeah, that was my first thought, financials.
You should not be going into business if you don't understand financials because it will come back to bite you.
But this also supports my argument about showing a profit, because if you can't speak financials when you go in, because you want your business to grow. Every person who starts a business at some point in time wants it to grow to some level.
Yes.
Right? I'm not going to define the level. They want it to grow to some level.
Even if I'm just a hobbyist, I still want it to grow to a level that it pays for itself.
Correct. Right?
So,
So at some point in time, if I have to use any investors, most likely loans, to grow that business, and I can't speak the language, you get discredited from that banker, right? Mm-hmm. And it's hard to recover from that.
Well, and then you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
I see people that get taken advantage of. So the banker discredits them. So then they go to the investor who then basically takes advantage of them because they can.
So let me share. This is a great example. Just recently had a conversation, brilliant kid. And everyone's a kid to me because they're younger than me.
You're
so
old
sorry.
Grandpa.
That's right.
You are legitimately a grandpa.
I am.
Which is weird. That still
I know it is.
Boggles my mind.
Except for when you see all my gray hair, then you go, oh, yeah, if you're not a grandpa, something's really wrong, right?
Yeah, but when I met you, you had gray hair.
That's probably true. I started going gray at like 35, 40.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Which was good because gray hair made me actually look smarter than I was, and so it gave me credibility.
That's why we started recording
confess
these.
Our sins later.
Yeah, no one was listening to the audio only, so I started showing you gray hair.
But this is what was interesting. We had just done the episode where we were talking about, if I'm going to invest money in a business, startup business, and we started talking about, if I have money to invest, if I'm not going to get a 20% plus or 25% return on my investment, then I don't start the business. Otherwise, I'm better off putting it into stocks or other things, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, it wasn't days after, and I don't know if that episode's out there. Maybe it is.
I got to think. So,
well, anyways,
sneak peek. I'm writing a book right now that's covering all of that, and so that's what's coming to my mind because that's one of the chapters in the book.
So if it's not, anyways, it will be coming out. because it's a fantastic episode that we did in helping you understand opportunity costs and when to invest in a startup business, et cetera, or whether just to put my money somewhere else. Okay. So he's looking for investors. Okay. Has about 3/4 of it covered, needs another quarter, and the other 1/4% that he needs is still high six figures.
Okay.
Okay. But he says, all right, so look, I'm looking for investors. I'm willing to pay out 8% for their investment. What do you think of that? And I said, you'll never find one. You're way too low. What do you mean? I thought I was paying good. Okay. So the opposite side of it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Which is, you usually think the other way around, but he was trying to attract investors, but his interest that he was willing to pay for their investment coming into it, the interest and eventually the principal back, but the interest that they would make on it was only like 8%. And I'm like, I can go in the stock market any given day of the week and just invest in blue chips and make 10 to 12.
Right.
That's guaranteed.
Yeah. Yeah. With little risk.
Right.
Like as long as I'm willing to wait, I'll get my money back.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was just like, oh, that's super interesting that he wasn't speaking the language because he didn't actually understand what you could actually get in other investments. And so it's in some ways you put that out there and then you wonder why investors are going, I don't know if this is right for me. No, what they're really saying is, I'm not going to consider that. You're not paying nearly enough in investment. So I counsel him. I says, look, you got to get into that, whether you like it or you got to get into that 20, 25%. He's like, but that's a lot. I'm like, how much are you getting out of this deal? Right? On the end, you're still getting 80%. 80%.
Yeah.
Right? You're still going to make a grundle of money and you're worried about giving up more because the return is still incredible if you can make this deal happen.
Yeah.
Right? So helping him speak the language a little differently was important too.
Well, and I've seen so many people that they can't get through their head the difference between personal finance and business finance.
Yeah.
It's like,
so that can be your number 2.
No. I'm still on number 1. I'm still on number 1.
All right.
Because I know what number 2 is. Number 2 is a good one. And so I'll wrap up number 1 here. But just speaking the language of business, a lot of times I'll see people that they might have $50,000 in cash reserves for their business. And they think to themselves, man, if I had $50,000 in my savings account at home, that would be a lot of money. And I'm like, well, it's not for a business.
That's right.
It's not uncommon for a business to need several hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash reserve.
So we're talking,
and I'm not even talking a big business. Like this is just a good medium-sized business needs a lot of money.
So just real quick, so we don't beat the horse too much on this one, because I do like where you're going with it. When you talk about business finances, I think it follows the same as personal finances, and that is I need 3 to 6 months of liquid cash to cover daily expenses.
Yeah.
Right.
You could say that.
So in personal, if I look at it and I say, look, if I have to cut back and I need, keeping numbers simple, $1,000 to pay bills and put food on the table and cover all my monthly expenses so that I don't lose my house. Okay. I need to have at a minimum, okay, $3,000 to $6,000 in a bank that is untouchable just for that. Okay. Well, now here's the thing with a business though. The same principle roughly applies, but you're not talking $1,000 because by the time you had payroll and overhead and inventory, you're talking $10,000, right?
Yeah.
So I need to have $30,000 to $60,000 in a bank account that's liquid cash to
for
cover
a really small business.
Yes, just to make sure, because people always say, well, I'm good and things are going well. No, economies are too volatile right now. Things change overnight. Mother Nature's unforgiving. Okay, you can't weather that storm unless you have that cash.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on to number 2.
For me, or you?
I'll start this one because you started last one.
Okay.
In business, if you are the owner, you have to trust the people that you hire.
Oh, that's a good one.
And the problem
that kind
here
of supports mine as well. My number 2.
Funny that we're sort of
from a slightly different angle. Okay.
The problem here is that people don't understand what real trust looks like. And so I'm going to give an example. If you've got someone underneath you and you put them in charge of a major account and you say, look, I want you to grow this account. And that person is going to put together a deal for that account. And if you tell them, you're like, hey, I want to sign off on that deal before you submit it to them. And then you start trying to revamp that deal. Look at this. That person, let's assume you hired correctly. That person is competent. They have spent a ton more time. They have put all of their expertise into it. They have the relationship with the account or the business. Okay. And you are assuming that your quick overview surpasses all of their expertise. Yeah. What a terrible display of trust.
Right.
You're basically telling them, hey, I'm so much smarter than you that in 30 minutes to an hour of reading over all this stuff, I can critique and change everything that you've spent the last 2 weeks researching, reviewing, analyzing, giving some time for it to process. And so when I see people, owners, entrepreneurs that just have to have their finger in everything, I'm like, all you're doing is telling people that you don't trust them, that you think you're the smartest person in the entire company, and you are doomed to mediocrity at best.
Right.
I mean, failure is looming on the horizon, but mediocrity is basically where you're going to reside because no one can use their talents, their expertise. Everything has to funnel through you because you don't trust them. And then, and I'll get off my rant here in just a second. The thing that entrepreneurs confuse is they confuse likability and friendliness with trust. They'll say things like, oh, no, I would call that person in a heartbeat. If ever I had a problem or a concern, like I would talk to them openly about that. And I'm like, good, they're friendly. But you don't trust that they did their job correctly. You're not giving them the trust to do their job correctly. You're trying to micromanage. And it's like, no, I'm just making sure that things are running smoothly. Sorry, there's a lack of trust. It's micromanagement, and it's mediocrity.
Okay. So my number 2, which supports your last argument, so I might not even have to say anything now, and that is too many entrepreneurs / managers, business owners, assume they're the best boss, business owner, okay, manager, okay, and
God's gift to everything.
Yeah.
Where was the world before me?
That's right, and not in a blatant way, actually. But they do. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know that I need to say anything else because some of your last comments just sum it up and prove my point that, don't assume that you are a good boss, a good business owner. Don't. Assume you're the crappiest one and you're going to work at becoming better. Right?
I'm glad that you put that in there, the work at getting better, because I don't want people to just think, well, it just sucks, so...
No, that's the whole
work as though you
want to be. That I need to improve and I need to get better, and find those trainings, which is my third and my last one. If I had to put a third one, it would be professional development.
Okay,
because I'm a huge advocate of that. That is, find those areas that even though you think you're good, you're probably really not, and still do that training. Right?
Yeah.
I'm a great communicator. No, go take a communication class, okay? Go take a business communication class. Go take a crucial conversations class, right? Go take a Stephen Covey's 7 Habits class.
Let's bring your husband in here and ask him if he agrees that you're a great communicator.
Or vice versa, because as guys, we know we're morons when it comes to communicators. It takes a lot of work for a guy generally because we just grunt and point, right? Thank heavens that my family realizes past this, or that's what I'm doing. But don't assume that because you think you're kind of good at that you actually are. Just don't. Just continue to get training and training and training, because most business owners, managers, CEOs, entrepreneurs, they think because I've been to school and I have this degree, I'm good. Mm-hmm. And they don't do any more training.
Yeah.
And it's so foolish.
Or even if they haven't been to school, they start relying on, I pulled myself up from the bootstraps. I built this business from ground zero. I'm like, that's cool. That's a great accomplishment. I actually was a really fast runner back in high school, and I ran track, and I competed in state when,
doesn't matter anymore.
But guess what? That was back 20, 30 years ago. What am I doing today?
Yeah. And a lot of times it's just simply reading a book.
Yeah.
I'm reading another one right now that I mentioned to you a couple of times because some stuff in it, 80-20, it's called an 80-20 CEO. So, even just reading a book, if you can't find the right training until you're looking for something, there are amazing books out there on business.
Can I add a caveat there?
Yeah.
I agree 100%, read a book, but just because you read a book, if you read a book and say, oh, that would be great for my sales manager.
You failed.
I need to make sure that my accountant is doing this.
I need to make sure Ryan Murray reads this book.
Yeah. The second that you are assuming that everyone else needs that, you totally miss the point. Yeah. Read the book and say, okay, what am I doing wrong? Stop even worrying about other people doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Just get your own crap put together. Clean your own house before you tell someone that their living room is messy.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Oh, that wasn't my last one though. However, you already led in with the training. Do you have anything further you want to talk about with the training for your third point?
Just professional development. It needs to be an active part for you and employees, even down to, if you have just a receptionist that comes in and answers phones. There's a ton of good trainings on hospitality. A lot of times you think hospitality training is for someone in a restaurant or a hotel. But it's not. You can learn. Matter of fact, if you're the owner of a business, go take a hospitality training. You might be surprised at how dumb you really are when it comes to conversations and interacting and promoting the good things that you do. I mean, hospitality is actually a great training for most people. It just changes your mindset.
Well, and this is really good here because when we're talking about training, if you're only doing training that interests you, you're failing because you're not being well-rounded. Now, I'm an advocate of strengthening your strengths. And you don't have to be a master of everything, but you have to take trainings that are outside of your comfort zone, or else you're going to get so narrow-minded that you become rigid and inflexible, and you're terrible to be around because you start thinking
you can only talk about one thing.
Yeah, like to you, everything is theory of constraints because you've read every book on theory of constraints. And I'm like, man, theory of constraints is amazing. But if everything to you is theory of constraints, then you don't understand that there's a human side too. And maybe I'm not looking for the most efficient way of doing things. Maybe I want an inefficient conversation with someone because then their morale is boosted because they feel valued.
Right.
And, so, okay. You good?
I'm good.
All right.
Those are my top three.
So this is my third one, and that is make your business boring. Your business should be boring. And what I mean by that is you should have a process in place that is so predictable that it's boring. I've been listening to some really interesting, there was a great TED Talk that I listened to. It's a recent TEDx talk that came out of the University of Nevada, and I apologize that I don't remember who was presenting. Maybe I'll have to pull it up and throw it in the notes here. But anyway, he talked about boring leadership and how we as a society, and this is across all cultures, this is not unique to U.S. leadership or Americans, this is across all cultures, we are driven to an exciting story. Well, the problem with an exciting story is it's usually very dramatic because it's got all sorts of conflict and problems and things are going wrong. If your business is running so smooth that nothing is going wrong, it's not interesting to talk about. It's really boring. And so my advice to entrepreneurs is to strive for a boring business. And the way you get a boring business is to have legit processes in place. And when I say legit, the problem that I see is a lot of entrepreneurs, they have their process. There are ways that I like to do things. But just because I like to do so this was hard for me. I was working with a team on a project, and I consider myself a good communicator. And every member of that team told me that I was communicating poorly.
Because you assumed you were so good. Just like my point number 2.
Yeah, right. And after swallowing that pill,
I love it.
It hurt.
I love it.
And realizing, okay, what is making me a bad communicator? And I realized that what they were saying had nothing to do with, I'm really good at using words and I never have a shortage of words. They were complaining that they're like, you would tell us a whole bunch of stuff and then you would go back on what you said and we didn't have a clear process.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh, so my communication problem wasn't that I was doing a bad job of explaining something. It was I would explain something, and then when I explained it to someone else, I would put a nuance into it. And then I'd explain to someone else and put a nuance into it. And by the end, there's like, we don't know what you want because you've told us all different things.
Yeah.
And it was my fault, 100% my fault. And so having that process in place. But the problem is I see so many businesses, they'll just be like, follow the SOP, look at the standard operating procedure. And when I've had the opportunity to go and consult with businesses and I pull up the SOPs and I read through the SOP and I'm like, do you realize how this could be misinterpreted many different ways?
Yeah.
Just because it's called standard doesn't mean that it's actually very standardized. And if I have the opportunity in a consulting environment to do a little, on-the-spot case study, I'll grab 2 different people and I'll say, okay, read this SOP and you tell me, what am I supposed to do with this form right here? And then I grab someone else, read this SOP and tell me, what am I supposed to do with this form right here? And they'll give me 2 different answers. Like, well, obviously this goes to the supervisor for signature. And this one is, well, obviously this goes to the manager for signature. Like, oh, so we're sending the form to 2 different people because you guys are interpreting what management is differently because it really wasn't that clear. Okay. And so my advice is just process your business down. Put a process in place so that it's very boring. I love the E-Myth Revisited. It's an excellent book. If anyone wants to understand process, it uses the example of McDonald's and how McDonald's can be run by, basically teenagers. Yeah. The people that own McDonald's are not there. And that, you've got food that's one of the most inconsistent things, and they have figured out how to make food consistent globally. And you've got different sourcing of, beef. Man, beef across the world is different. And they've managed to make it very systematic, very well done. That's why they're the biggest restaurant in the world. I think
they probably are. Probably by a leap and a bound.
Yeah. So anyway, to me, process... That's my number 3.
Okay.
So.
Well, good. Thanks.
Are we good there?
Yeah. No, I think that was a great conversation. Hope there was some value in that for you. Just like I said, from both perspectives, there's so much to learn about business, and it's always a process. And as soon as you understand and treat it as a process, that's when I think most companies start to have the growth. They go about doing that. So thanks for joining us today. You can find more from us on our trainings and other things at jazzjune.com/learnbiz. You can also email us, Ryan Murray at
just Ryan. So guys, we're working with Ethan.
Okay.
He's getting there.
No, cut. Take 2.
You know that Ryan whole process thing that we were talking about that Ethan never follows the process here?
I only know my email address.
What's your email?
Ethan@learnbiz.com. com.
No.
Oh my God.
There went the process.
You're gonna have to cut all this out. Fix it. Don't cut it
I
out.
am not taking this out.
You take glory over this.
Ryan at learnbiz.co, Ethan at learnbiz.co, and thanks so much for joining us.
I'm internalizing it. I got it.